We are live. Good to see you today, my EOS Podcast friends. We've got a fun show for you today. We're going to be talking about EOS. We're going to be talking about Murmur, the Dapp for EOS. And we have Abhinav here. So go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll get the show started.
Sure. Hi, guys. My name is Abhinav. Thanks a lot for having me. I run a company called Chainflux based out of India, where we build decentralized applications across different blockchains. On EOS, I have founded and started Murmur, which is basically a content rewarding and spam proof social network built on EOS, been live for about 3 months so far. And we have crossed over 100,000 transactions that have occurred through our smart contracts. It's on iOS and Android, and the web version comes out next month.
Fantastic. And at the end of the show today, we're going to have 2 trivia questions. We're going to be giving away 6,000 Murmur tokens. So listen for that, and then we will. You'll answer the trivia questions in the YouTube comments for those 6,000 tokens. So that'll be coming, and we'll get into Murmur. But as we always start the show off, Abhinav, what is the most interesting thing going on in EOS right now for you?
So right now, the entire kind of debate around governance, on-chain governance, and how it's progressing, as well as different solutions for key management that is coming out on EOS. Privacy-based solutions. I think PrivEOS is one of those projects. And the explosion of dApps and the developer community that is growing on EOS, with people adopting EOS dApps and some people even migrating their dApps on other blockchains into EOS. So kind of the large-scale adoption that EOS is getting, that I think is by far the most interesting right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, there's a ton going on. That's why I always say that's why I love doing this podcast. I just get to deep dive into EOS every day. So, what do you think with governments? What's your kind of opinion there, and what do you like about where we're at? What would you like to have changed?
So I would, in fact, I don't think I would have too much changed. I would say, it's good to have kind of opposing kind of opinions on various aspects on governance. It's also good to see, like I mentioned, almost every day you see at least 3-4 new dApps being released on EOS with a lot of users, specifically because, transactions are free. They have the concept of staking, you have CPU, etc. And on the web, it's quite easy now with Scatter. So kind of trying to get adoption from a relatively more non-crypto crowd. I would say if kind of blockchain has to reach mass scale adoption, my grandmother or my mother should be able to easily use an app without knowing it's on blockchain. I'd say a blockchain poised to do that right now is EOS, specifically because of its various features, EOS account names, human readable account names, fast transaction times, dApp developers where they stake CPU for the user. So, these are the things that I see going forward that is most exciting for me about building on EOS for sure.
Yeah, and talking about getting those antes onto EOS and making it easy for everyone to use. You mentioned key management also. What do you see kind of the future of key management and making that a more streamlined process?
So if right now, if I lose my private key, I've lost all my funds. Is there a way in which I can delegate my account? As soon as I create my account, is there a way I can delegate my account to 2 of my, say, closest friends or, my closest relatives? In that sense, is there a way in which my account could be retrieved or recovered through a simple kind of a multi-sig kind of contract, where simple actions can be done by my account alone, but a retrieval has to have kind of 2 signatures out of 3. I see kind of these solutions built on multi-sig kind of smart contracts, as well as using EOS, account permissions, specific dApp permissions that you can create, as being something that is very much needed, not just in EOS, but kind of with any blockchain where you're storing funds. and storing tokens. So I'd see this as the kind of future for that, for account management at least.
Yeah, because that also, it's not just for if someone loses their key, but if someone is unable to retrieve their key, or, maybe they pass away or something like that. They just had that kind of semi-scandal with that exchange. Forget which exchange it was, but
I think it was Quadrija X.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And the guy passed away with the keys, and there's no way to retrieve it apparently. So yeah, those type of things they're pretty big sticking points. Even though they don't happen often, it's like they shouldn't be able to happen at all, really. So that'll be interesting. And then, so we've got that, and then we've also got privacy with that new privacy coin. It looks like it's the EOS privacy coin. It looks like it is kind of like Monero with the I think they're called ring signatures, and the and that's a big step also. I was just talking about it with Crypto Tim on the last show, actually, but he made a good point. It's not about being able to do these giant, transactions and hide what you're doing. It's more about if EOS is, as it becomes more adopted, all of your metadata. So just going to like the grocery store or something, if you were able to spend EOS, and if every transaction you ever did is just on the blockchain for everyone to see, then people should have control of that. So that's why it's important for all these little small transactions to get some sort of privacy coin. Then you can release your data as needed. Even if you want to sell it to marketers or something, you'd be able to get value for your own data. So that privacy coin will be powerful also, I think. Are you familiar with how that, have you read the white paper on that, or are you familiar with how it works?
I had a brief conversation with that team today, in fact, a few hours ago. So where we were looking at it is from the aspect of, from the Murmur aspect, how we could include kind of their, so I think they go live in about 2.5 months.
Mm-hmm.
But where we are looking at it is, on Murmur, if you want to send a Murmur right now, it is available on blocks.io. If you do post a Murmur, it's available on blocks.io, eospark.com, for everybody to see that this account name has posted this Murmur. But is there a way in which I can post my Murmur only such that my followers can see it, or only such that certain friends or certain one of my people that I want to see it can see it? So having select privacy and selective privacy is what we were looking at, especially when it comes to murmurs and messages, similar to kind of how Facebook has a feature where you post and only your friends or your followers or certain groups can see it. So we were looking at it from that aspect.
Oh, that is cool. That starts to give people a lot more control over their information. I think that's where a lot of these, hopefully a lot of the newer social apps like you're making here are going that direction, where people they can pick and choose what they want to do with their information. So what did it sound like? Did it sound like they have a solution for that, a blockchain solution for that? Is that possible?
It sounds like it's possible for sure. But we'll find out once we go through their code in detail. They're on the Jungle testnet right now. So probably next week we'll be kind of going through their code and seeing if it's possible to try it out at least on Murmur. But probably we'll do that once we have integrated at least one game into Murmur, then we'll kind of move in that direction.
Cool. And the other thing you mentioned was the dApps and dApps migrating to EOS. Was there any specific dApps you were talking about as far as ones that have maybe come from ETH or other blockchains to EOS, or was that just kind of a general statement?
So two I know one I know has obviously moved. That is Banker has moved. Not moved completely, but also replicated on EOS. I know Blockchain Cuties, which is a kind of a game where you can trade in ERC7 to 1, at least on Ethereum, but they've also come into EOS, and I think they'll be coming to Tron as well. That one game is there. I am not sure, maybe 0x Warriors as well. I'm not 100% sure on that. I know there might be another kind of Kyber-like exchange that again moves on to EOS in addition to Ethereum. So these are the projects I know that are kind of doing the multi-blockchain route.
Do you see projects adopting a multi-blockchain route? Is that a way for them to possibly get a bigger subscriber base? Because each chain kind of has a clan of app users. So is that something you're seeing also?
Yeah. So I guess Dapp Radar would be the easiest kind of place to see what games are going across or what apps are going across blockchains. But it is difficult to build across blockchains because each one has their own kind of smart contracting template. You have to get that contract audited, and especially if it's an exchange, you'll have to kind of go through the code in quite a bit of detail. If it's a game, it should be relatively easier, but still, it's a lot of work and a lot of effort to maintain. So that's why I see even on Dapp Radar, if you see, you have EOS, Ethereum, and Tron, so they don't cover many of the other blockchains because it's a lot of effort to kind of apply your project in so many of these different chains that are coming up. So I see it as a trend, but only probably over the next 6 months. Maybe an opportunity would be how you can deploy one DApp that can potentially work on multiple chains. I see that as a possible opportunity in the next 6 months.
Yeah, that would be big. I can see from like from the startup standpoint, like Murmur, for example, there's kind of a decision to make whether you want to put all your resources into, let's say, the EOS chain, and you're almost kind of betting on the EOS chain succeeding and the community succeeding. Whereas the other option would be to dilute your resources a little bit. You'd be less focused, but you'd be kind of hedging yourself, like with Ethereum, Tron, and if one of those starts gaining more users rapidly, you're already there, or maybe you just gain, or you're just gaining some users in that area. How have you guys approached that? Are you kind of all in on EOS, or are you kind of hedging as far as that goes?
So as of now, we're all in on EOS.
Mm-hmm.
We might consider EOS IO based chains in the next 3 months. But right now we're all in on EOS. I'd say, we would prioritize focus over, like you mentioned, diluting resources and putting it across chains.
Yeah. And even within EOS, that's kind of a funny point. Even within the EOS, it's easy to dilute your resources and try other, because there's sister chains that have other opportunities popping up as well. So are there any sister chains that have a really high app usage? It seems like Telos is probably the second highest app usage. Is that what you're seeing too?
Yes. So we have just looked into Telos. We have looked into, I think, Wobbly, Boss Core, probably not that much.
Mm-hmm.
But from the kind of developer community, I would say, of course, the main EOS chain would lead by a long distance. But yeah, like you mentioned, Telos is pretty similar and it's growing quite fast, at least the dApps on it. I haven't studied too many dApps on Telos. We did kind of look into it about 3 weeks ago, but since then we haven't gone through that in detail.
Is that a pretty simple move from main chain to Telos as far as smart contracts and everything goes? Is that a fairly straightforward process?
Yeah, that's going to be a very straightforward process. I don't think too many things have changed on the smart contracting layer. Probably on the governance layer and on the inflation layer, there are a few kind of modifications there. But it's not going to be a difficult process if we were to move. But again, informing users and changing the token account address and kind of moving all the contracts into Telos and having those account names also airdropped. It's quite a bit of effort, and I feel that with the kind of resources that the main EOS chain has, it probably has a greater chance of reaching mass adoption in the future.
Yeah, and there's that interesting project that just came out, the liquid apps, where they're hopefully making the resources more affordable on the main EOS chain. That bodes well for the main chain as well. That'll make it tough for a lot of the sell for the sister chains right now is that resources are cheaper. But if they're able to manage resources on the main chain, that kind of takes that opportunity away. So sister chains will have to present some sort of other value proposition. Like maybe Telos is interesting because they have a different governance. So they kind of have something unique going on there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see that develop. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Murmur, I've been using, and another guy on my team uses Murmur often. He's using every day.
Okay.
He's one of your everyday users. It is, I mean, how would you describe it? Because
so I would describe it as a content rewarding and spam proof social network.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it's built on blockchain is specifically because we would like to adopt these two features into building kind of a new microblogging platform or a new social network that we have built. The concept why we built it on EOS is specifically because EOS has readable account names. You can abstract the entire blockchain layer from the end user to enable them to kind of look at this as a new social network that they could use. We see that this could, if you, like I said, if you abstract out the blockchain part, more people who do not know too much about crypto or blockchain can potentially use an application like this. That is the kind of end goal. We have the Murmur wallet so Murmur is basically, you have 4 main features. You can post, you can like, you can comment, you can share. We call it having a murmur, commenting. A yell is a share, and a snoop is a like. You have the Murmur wallet, which holds basically your Murmur tokens and signs all transactions that you create on Murmur itself. All that has been abstracted out as of now, so it's easy for the end user. You have a feature called Whisper, which is basically a peer-to-peer encrypted chat. So if I'm whispering something to you, that chat is encrypted with your public key. So only you can unlock it when you open it with your private key. So hence it's entirely encrypted, but just the record that the chat has occurred between you and me is stored on the blockchain. As of today, I think over 2,000 whispers have gone through, again, our smart contracts. On Murmur itself, as I mentioned, over 100,000 murmurs, snoops, yells, and shares and comments has happened on the platform itself. Right now, it's on iOS and Android. It's completely live. Web app, again, beginning of March is when we are targeting the initial version of the web app. Web app will not have the Whisper feature, but it will have most of the other features. We are integrating games into Murmur. So similar to how Facebook and Facebook Games is present, Murmur will have any kind of EOS-based game that is there, whether it's EOS Bet or Pix EOS or Farm EOS or Blockchain QTs. Any of these can be integrated into Murmur because we are enabling that particular integration. Similar, you can think of it like how Scatter enables signing of transactions on the desktop. Similar to signing of transactions would happen within the app itself. So kind of users don't need to go out of it for anything to do with playing EOS-based games.
Okay. Yeah. I remember when I generated my key pair in the Murmur app, you were talking about some of the blockchain layer being abstracted out. You create an account right there. So it says, what do you want your username to be? You pick a username, it generates a key pair for you. And then I believe that it emailed me the key pair. So I didn't even end up writing it down. I just copied it maybe and then had it emailed. Is that how that works? It was a little while ago that I did it. But.
Yeah. So right now, you create a 12-character account name, anything from A to Z and 1 to 5. That is what is standard with EOS. Key pair is generated locally. Account gets activated within 24 hours. The key pair, as soon as it's created, you have to either copy it and store it somewhere, or you can email it to yourself or somebody who you trust very deeply. And then once that is done, account gets activated within 24 hours. The reason for this is that it we need some time to stake, first of all, to pay RAM for your new account, which is about 0.12 to 0.15 EOS. And we stake about 1 EOS per user. So every new user, we need to have enough EOS to be able to stake for them. So to give us that time is when we kind of create. That's why we kind of take that time to create accounts.
Okay. Do you plan on? Is that something that's with heavy adoption that you'll be able to keep up, or as far as staking the EOS for people, or do you plan on possibly renting EOS in the future, or do you plan on possibly transferring that to the user somehow?
The renting feature we have looked into, but one issue with that is, so we are not renting it ourselves. So kind of we are taking EOS and then giving it out to, renting it out to others or staking it on behalf of others. I'm not sure. We're not yet sure how that works, because if I have to rent, I use it myself, but can I use it for others who I'm staking it for? Second is that once we kind of look at getting larger adoption, there are other kind of, like you said, the liquid dApps which is coming up, VRAM and a couple of other features that are coming up. We will start looking into those as well. So basically we will find out solutions how we can reduce at least our costs for staking on behalf of users. But as of now, once that problem occurs, we're going to find a pretty good way to solve that.
Yeah, it's an interesting time that you're in to be kind of having a startup, because not only are you having to consider scaling yourself, but like EOS itself, or the EOS IO, is also scaling. So you basically you're thinking, okay, well, I don't know, but at some point when we get there, like EOS is going to have scaled also, and things will be different there. So yeah, I guess there's not really a way to answer that question. There's not really a way to know, but yeah, VRAM will be interesting with the liquid apps and that solution there. So okay, well,
yeah.
And you now have I know that you have a new app, a new in-app EOS wallet. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's basically the Murmur wallet. What it does is it stores, everything is stored locally on your phone. Whether you import your active key or whether you create a new EOS account, everything is stored locally on your phone. You can send, receive EOS, receive any EOS-based token. Fingerprint authentication is enabled for phones that support that. All transactions that occur on Murmur is basically signed using that wallet. And once the kind of games and once dApps are integrated into Murmur, say Pixios, for example, then whatever kind of transactions you make on that dApp will be signed using the Murmur wallet. So for a layman or for a lay user, a Murmur wallet will be his equivalent of entering the EOS ecosystem. He may not necessarily know that this is EOS. It has a block, there are block explorers, etc. But for him, it will be like a new Facebook plus Facebook game, but you get rewarded for content as well.
And you said that it's fingerprint enabled for phones that have that, so you can just log in your account with fingerprint?
So the login with fingerprint comes out next week.
Okay.
Right now, if you want to send a transaction, then you confirm that using fingerprint, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You had mentioned also that it's spam free. How does Murmur, how's a blockchain make this spam free?
So two things. One is currently, on EOS, people need EOS staked in order to perform transactions. People need CPU to be staked. That partially prevents spam, because now, trolls or social media trolls require something to be deposited or some financial amount to be deposited in order to kind of troll. That is one roadblock for sure. In most other platforms, it's free. Second is we are introducing that will probably start from mid-March, where we'll introduce a community moderation tool that moderates, how many, based on the number of tokens you have, you will kind of have a voting right, if you will, to vote on, say, abusive content or spam content. And then that basically those accounts will not be shown on the front end on Murmur, and will not be kind of allowed to enter Murmur on the phone itself. But if they want, say, worst case, they can still post a Murmur by directly interacting with our contracts through, say, the terminal or through the backend itself, which we cannot stop. So these are two ways in which we can prevent spam.
So that sounds, a little bit like proof of stake, but without like stake weighted voting. So people can't really use their stake to vote people up or give them rewards, but they can use their stake to point out like bad or maybe fake news or whatever you'd like to call it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And you can also reward users by tip. We have a tipping feature that is live, where basically you can tip any murmur that you would like in EOS or Mur tokens by just immediately kind of clicking on the tip icon, one fingerprint, and that's it, you're done. So very simple user experience there as well.
What do you see the tipping action looking like? Is that happening often, or is that like what's that? How's that looking?
As of now, it's happening pretty often. I wouldn't say probably. I'd say about 500 to 1,000 tips have gone out so far, I think. Mm-hmm. We have just introduced the decibel system, which is kind of our way of incentivizing users to be on Murmur. Basically, it means that for every action you perform on Murmur, whether it's a murmur, a comment, a snoop, or a yell, you earn certain decibels. So decibels are basically points. And at the end of the week, based on the number of points total users have accumulated, we release a certain number of tokens every week that then gets distributed to those users. We'll be soon automating. Right now, it's kind of done on our backend, on our servers, but we'll soon be automating that on the smart contract itself, so that it kind of creates a self-rewarding and a self-sustaining kind of economy. You could think of it like an attention-based economy. And people are automatically rewarded for every action that they perform on Murmur.
Will that be ongoing, or is that a temporary until the users increase more?
So that'll be ongoing for the next 3 years.
Okay.
And entirely automated and on the contract itself.
And you're actually giving them Murmur tokens, is that right? Is that what their reward is?
Yeah.
And what do people do with Murmur tokens? What's the currency or the value there?
So the value there is basically once we hit a certain user base, if we need people to get, say for example, advertisers want to advertise to end users, mm-hmm. They require a certain number of tokens in order to be able to advertise. You can stake tokens, like I said, on our community moderation feature. And you can give users tokens if you want to advertise to them or their followers. Again, that will be put on the advertiser or our ad network smart contract itself. So this is the way kind of the tokens leave the system, and the way they enter the system is through the decibel system.
Okay, that makes sense. So the users, by actually using and interacting with the app, are basically earning. They're almost like attention tokens. Whereas, like if an advertiser in the future wants to advertise to people, then they are going to need to possibly purchase that attention. Okay. That's have you seen that model implemented on other platforms? Are you familiar with any other platforms that are doing that?
I think BAT is doing something similar. Mm-hmm. It's a brilliant project that has probably, I think 2017 they launched, and millions of users. I don't know if anyone else I know a couple of ad networks. I think MAD network, Ad Bank, couple of other ad platforms are there, but I don't know exactly what the utility of those tokens are. Yeah. Or how their kind of economy is.
What's your roadmap look like a little bit longer term, maybe through 2019? How's that look?
So I'd say over the next 2 months, the objective is to, like I'd mentioned, abstract the blockchain layer from a user experience standpoint. I think that should be achievable in the next 2 months. After that, it's looking at more mainstream adoption, looking at say digital artists, looking at influencers on social media, to look at this as an alternative platform that they could use, specifically because of these two features that I mentioned. Censorship resistant, I would say, is another feature. But I would say the two main features is content rewarding and spam proof, and look at kind of user adoption as the next phase once the product is say not blockchain agnostic, but has the entire blockchain part hidden from the end user, and they don't use a DApp specifically, but they just kind of use an app that it makes it easier for them to kind of use.
Yeah, the pulling in influencers or from other social media or just the general public is kind of a big hurdle for a lot of all the EOS projects. It's like, because we have this core community you'll get a certain amount of the core community who's going to use and try your DApp. That big step is a DApp reaching out and kind of crossing the chasm into the non-crypto world. Do you have a game plan on how to do that? Are you, is that something you guys are trying to figure out right now? And what type of influencers might you be targeting?
So initially, kind of we're looking at events, at least. So since most of the team is based in India, looking at events centered around India. Say next one we would probably look at is probably the Cricket World Cup. If we can build a simple kind of fantasy league game or a simple game around that event, and then start kind of marketing that specifically for people who like those kind of games. There are a lot of people who play kind of simple fantasy games. Tie up with a couple of them and get them to kind of post once they play their game, get them to post their game on Murmur. Either go to an existing game and say, hey, you guys want to adopt EOS, you guys want to put it on EOS, we'll help you do that. Or create our own game and say, people can play this game and immediately post their results on Murmur and get potentially rewarded for that. So that's going to be kind of centered around events largely. Influencers, initially target a few Twitter influencers. Probably the easiest, not the easiest, but the main mode of target would also be earn.com, where you can target a lot of people, at least crypto-centric people. And then kind of see how that goes after that.
I think that's a good take. Is the mobile gaming niche is definitely a place where people are pretty active, and it's an easy place to try to get people to start sharing. You mentioned the Cricket World Cup. That's kind of cool. One of my friends is really into cricket, and we don't have it on TV that often here, so I've only seen it a couple times. But do you play cricket by any chance? Have you played before?
Yeah. I think most people from this part of the world play cricket.
Yeah, everyone plays cricket, huh?
Yeah,
are you a what's the pitcher called, a bowler? Is that right, or something like that?
Yeah. So the equivalent to baseball is kind of the batter is the batsman, the pitcher is the bowler, and then you have fielders. And you have I think the World Cup is a 50-over game. So you have 6 balls bowled by the bowler. It constitutes 1 over. So kind of it's a very big deal, at least here. One occurs once in 4 years. So probably try and do something centered around that.
Cool. Would you do something like in-app centered around it? Or are you talking about like setting up booths out at events? So
just in-app centered around it. And probably talk to a couple of fantasy league games that are already there. Mm-hmm. And either say, hey, you guys want to build on EOS, we can help you do that. It probably would help you reach the EOS community, which is growing quite fast. And the advantage to us would be also that part of your users would be able to use Murmur and then post their scores and interact with users on Murmur. That's kind of one area we're targeting.
Yeah, cool. Well, it seems like you guys have made a lot of progress. I know we talked about probably 2 or 3 months ago on the EOS podcast, and when you were going, and now it's you've made a ton of progress. So that's great to see. Is there anything that we kind of glossed over, or that you'd like to cover more about Murmur that we haven't hit on yet?
I think we've covered on most of the features. If anybody looks at the app now, we have the public feed as well. So it's kind of reaching literally every day we are pushing updates, because we have introduced a new feature called a code push, which is a very technical term, but basically means that we can push updates without the user having to always update their app or reinstall their app. So hence all the updates gets pushed right from the backend itself. So literally every few days, if a user opens the app, he will see something or the other that is new within the app itself.
Cool. Well, my buddy is down at Acapulco in Mexico, and he's been murmuring or shouting or murmur. No, he's been murmuring. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Murmuring from down there. So I've been watching his pictures and stuff from Mexico. So
awesome.
We have 2 trivia questions as promised that we're going to release. So to the EOS podcast listeners here, and these are each for 3,000 murmur. What it takes is answer the questions in the comments of the YouTube channel and then put your murmur account name. So answer the question, put your current murmur account name, and then so question number 1, what feature do you think is coming next on Murmur? So what do you think the next feature that's coming to Murmur will be? So answer and put your account name, and then we'll look at it, and 3,000 tokens can be sent to you for a good answer. Number 2, second question, what do you think will be in next week's EOS update? So Block 1 is going to make an announcement. And do you think it's going to be governance on EOS, or do you think it's going to be an announcement about the Block 1 wallet? So again, that question is, what do you think next week's update is going to be? Governance on EOS or the Block 1 wallet? So again, answer that question in the comments and put your Murmur account name for the chance at 3,000 Murmur tokens, 3,000 for each, so 6,000 total. Yeah. So did you have anything to add there, Abhinav?
Yeah. I mean, those who answer the questions and probably the first ones to answer it correctly will get 3,000 Murmur tokens for each question from the Murmur team, which will be sent to their account name on Murmur. Cool.
Well, there you have it. So as we start to wind down here with that fun competition, where's the best place for people to find Murmur Dapp?
So on the app, on the iStore and on the Play Store, just type Murmur space app, or in many cases you type Murmur itself, you'll see the M purple logo. Use the app, and Murmur Dapp AC is the official Murmur account there. You can also find us on our Telegram channel. These 2 places, I would say, are the best ways to reach us.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I have the app on my phone, and it's easy to use. So even if you just get the app on your phone, like you said, from the download the app, and you can just create an account right there on your phone pretty easily. That's what I did. I didn't import any of my other accounts or anything. I just created one, and it was easy. So that's kind of a cool feature that the blockchain's hidden there. That's the end of the show, my EOS podcast friends, or it's close to the end. This is a podcast also. It's not just a YouTube channel. So the reason it's a podcast is because then you can listen while you're driving to work, or even better, while you are supposed to be working, you can be listening to the podcast and learning about EOS. I have a proxy. Mr. Happy Money is the proxy, and I interview block producers. I've been interviewing block producers since before the mainnet launch, and I have a great grasp on who the block producers that are doing big things are for the community, and I vote for those people. So Mr. Happy Money proxy, if you want a quality, in-depth vote for your block producers, then use that proxy. Also, EOS San Francisco block producer. We're building community on EOS. We're all about transparency and building stuff together. So EOS San Francisco. So those are my shameless plugs at the end of the podcast. Abhinav, thanks for coming on, man. And I appreciate it. And we'll have you back on in a few months and see what you guys are up to.
Thanks a bunch. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you.
Cool. Cheers, my EOS friends.
The money is not the prime asset in life. Time is, and your time is just a